Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Original D-Rose, Rod, The Names Burley, Twad Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, JMels24, Unamento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKiernan, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
And that would say something also against the heliocentric model, no?
It's helpful, that they've got all this stuff loaded on computers now for GPS, so now people don't even have to look at it. It's much easier to lie to people if they don't know. They're not actually looking at the real evidence anymore. Yes, maybe they say they calculate it based on their orbital mechanics and nonsense, but I don't know how anyone can believe that.
Well, those maps don't work. Don't they? Isn't there like the three-body problem?
Yeah, and the laws of nature is a bit of a problem for them. The moon was a big one for me, that you only see one face of it because it's going around at the same rate that we rotate. I mean, that's just very funny that anyone believes that. Yeah, elliptical orbits, spinning around, moving in various directions, and you're always perfectly lined up with the face of the moon.
Oh. That's the thing about the working backwards, right? You can like I guess you can make like the maps work one way or another. Just like you can make the celestials closer or farther away. You can still make it work in the maps, regardless of where they are, right?
Because if you're up in a plane, you get the same angle as if you are at sea level. Apart from the sun, there is a slight correction for the sun at altitude, but I think that's the only celestial that you have to adjust for altitude. It's like 1.2 degrees at 60,000 feet or something.
That answers one of my questions. So you say from sea level all the way to a plane, the angle is still the same, right?
It's almost like they move up with the observer, but
Well, is it the same or
wherever
is
you're
it the
moving
same?
up there is the same. No matter how high you are for all of the navigation stars. Anyway, it's just the sun that has a
All right, so
correction for altitude.
is the angle the same, yes or no?
I suppose there's not that many people who actually do celestial navigation in airplanes anymore because of communications. Maybe some people do.
All right, but does the angle change based on height, yes or no?
No.
Not for navigation stars.
Right, because that answers one of my questions, and I don't know how to explain it at the moment, but was Nathan going to say something?
I just said no, I was just answering you.
Yeah, because when you do for like the dip correction, right? Like, why doesn't I don't remember anything, the calculation of the angle changing, right? So that means the angle between sea level and your height of eye must not change then, right? Otherwise, you would have to calculate the angle being down and further back, but you don't do that calculation to go further back because the angle would not change. I
You've
was
got.
always wondering about that.
I thought you were talking about the angle between you and the star as you raise in height. Well, you're
Yeah, that's what I'm
always
talking about.
yeah. Well, you're always referencing the horizontal. So the further you get away from the horizon in altitude, the further you are away from the flat deck that the horizon represents in terms of the dissolution point you're utilizing. So you have to correct for that. So if you're using a mariner's sextant at height with the horizon, then you're going to correct for the baseline no longer being a straight flat line between you and the horizon and your position because you're elevated. So you correct for that. However, the angle to the star itself remains the same at all altitudes. So if you didn't have to make that correction, for example, you were using a bubble sextant, you would automatically have established a horizontal plane. Now, because the angle doesn't change, as you raise or lower in altitude, the reference, that's the baseline, is always parallel to the ground, and the angle to the star remains consistent. Now, when this has come up in conversation with Adam, he and I sort of chuckled in the respect that that's the glory of the heavens, if you will. We intentionally link it to a sort of a biblical or a religious type acquiescence to the fact that you can't explain that, right? What if it's a physical item, then as you raise in elevation, the angle's going to decrease because that's what happens. If you move up a lighthouse, if you're stood at the bottom of a lighthouse, a couple of feet away from it, and you measure the angle to the light, yeah, it's going to be very high. You're going to be almost craning your neck upwards. Well, obviously, as you raise in height, the angle to that light is decreasing as you increase, right? That's the normal behavior
Right.
of a physical item. Stars don't do that. As you raise in altitude, they stay the same angle. So if you were to plot out with a bubble sextant a horizontal baseline and measure the angle to the star, and then literally drop in altitude in a hot air balloon, if you keep it consistent, the angle would stay the same the whole time, as long as you had a reference to
Right.
horizontal. Okay, make sense?
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool and it makes sense. And I'm glad now I got this answered. that I was wondering about.
No, that's not what I meant. Does my explanation make sense? The fact that the angle
Yes.
doesn't change
How you
makes zero sense.
in the heliocentric, gotcha. Because
Not in the
it would be
heliocentric model. I didn't preface it at all. I just said it
oh,
makes zero sense. That is not a behavior we encounter with anything ever. That is just how the stars behave. Now, is that weird? Absolutely. Weird in the heliocentric? I don't care. I haven't even given it consideration. It's just not normal behavior with anything else that you observe that's got physicality to it. Now, for that reason, you can make your inference that they're not physical. Well, you don't know, so that's a step too far for me personally. What I will say is that behavior is weird. There's no other way to there's no other way to put it. But does my explanation make sense? As you raise in altitude, the angle with the star remains the same.
yes, it perfectly made sense. I got fully what you said. I
Oh,
added something, so you said no, I'm not saying that. So it's like, okay, I got you. But I got what you're saying.
the only bit I'm not saying is does it make sense as in does that what is that which is occurring make sense? Because no, the answer is no. But my explanation of what is occurring, I can explain it in detail so you can understand what is actually occurring without what is actually occurring making any sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. You're good at the explaining and teaching.
Oh, I'm humbled. Thank you.
Well, you and QE, I noticed you guys have a knack for that, so to say.
Maybe. My dad was a teacher. He used to teach in Zambia.
Okay.
There is a very small smidgen of truth when I say I'm black. My dad was indeed a Zambezi teacher.
Yeah.
Zambian, I think the right word is. It's got some great stories, one of which I may have told before, right? He was in this school. It was run by nuns. He's not necessarily a religious person, but the school was, and there was nuns running it. And one of the nuns ran after a dog that had went into the river and was about to go over Victoria Falls. You know Victoria Falls is? Highest waterfall there is. So she goes running after this
I
dog.
think it's the biggest one, right? Victoria Falls is bigger than Angel Falls.
Yeah, it's the biggest. So this is why this story sticks in my mind, right? Anyway, they're at the top of it, so they can't see the waterfall, but my dad knows it's there. The dog goes into the river and gets swept away. The nun runs after the dog to stop it. And my dad runs after the nun to stop her running after the dog. So it's my dad wrestling with this nun to stop her going into the river to stop the dog going over the falls. So he saved the nun's life. Obviously, the nun didn't save the dog's life, but he didn't go over the falls, which she would have.
But the dog went, right?
Yeah.
Hashtag
Absolutely.
Team People.
Oh, and by the way, you haven't handed out the G Plus link, just in case you don't know.
Yeah, that's intentional. I've got somebody I'm waiting to call about collecting something, and a couple of other things that I might have to nip away for. So if I give out the G Plus link, I have to sit here and let them all in manually, which is good. That's the reason I use it. But by the same token, Discord, I'm quite happy to just leave running, and if I do happen to nip off, everyone can still get in to an extent. And then I'll open the G Plus panel when I'm back. Although I was expecting this phone call 10 minutes ago and it hasn't come, so that's why I joined in the conversation, because it's looking like I'm sat here now. I might give it out. We'll give it another 10 minutes.
Yep. Okay.
Hold on. So you're saying you don't trust the panel on their own, Nathan? You'll be getting Brian to start up his union again.
It's not that. I have to let them in. They just wouldn't be there. So unless I'm sitting here and I allow access to them each individually, that's just how G
There's
Plus
this
works.
YouTuber.
But it means
There's
that...
this YouTuber. He has like. Go ahead.
Go on.
I was saying there's a YouTuber. He has like 300 followers, and he started He has like a conspiracy YouTube channel, and oh my god, he got onto flat Earth, and I messaged him. I said, hey, so pump your brakes there, pal, before you get your feelings hurt on the flat Earth thing. Like, hey, can I talk to you real quick? I just told him, can I talk to you real quick about flat Earth before you go into that? And yeah, he said he was going to talk to me.
Well, let him know.
But it's just funny.
There is
It's funny, I just stopped him at 300. Like, hey, let me just talk to you right quick before you start going spouting off shit.
Yeah, good for you. You're saving the guy from an embarrassing situation. As much as people know they're in the paradigm of the globe, it isn't true. So, in spite of back in 2015, let's say, people having consensus on their side, well, as we go through some of these videos recently, reacting to some of the stuff, we go, people are well aware of this situation, and a lot of it's causing cognitive pain for them.
Hey, Nathan, do you know how to go back and see comments you left on videos? How do you do that? Where do you go?
I don't know. I just have one.
Oh, and also, whenever you're a member watching members-only content, you still can't see it in the background. It has to have the window open, which still sucks. I don't know why they do that.
I don't know why they do that either. It's a YouTube thing. No, I do my comments in the morning and I just go to YouTube Studio and deal with my own. That's about it.
I think I have the YouTube thing. Like, he has like 300 followers. It's funny though, man. It's like, oh man, you're already going down the wrong path.
Yeah, my concern level for people going down the wrong path is decreasing with every day. So on the video that we did, Maths versus Science, with Sabine Hosselenfelder, well, that video has got a little rant at the end as a result of a super chat from D Rose, right? And that super chat led me on to talking about Dave McKeegan as a new anti-flat earther. And in that rant, I'm describing the shackles of people, chained to the wall, spitting and throwing mud at us as we walk free. And you think, how much time do you want to go back to the prison? How much time do you want to spend with those people that are chained up? They've given us a wide berth at the moment here. I mean, the door's still open. They could all flood in en masse at any moment if they find something juicy that they think will overcome our arguments. But, the state of footfall in the bar is never, a particular issue. It's just very flat earth heavy at the moment because that's the winning side, right? So on an open forum, the only thing you can moan about is the moderation if you're not winning. But, for my benefit financially, them coming here and arguing the toss with us is fine.
Oh, here
Beyond
it is.
that, I don't care.
It's the guy named Sammy Shares. He has 440 videos. I'm not telling you to go check him out, but the title that got my attention. The title of his YouTube video is called "I watched 500 hours of flat Earth YouTube videos." That's and I guess he had no facts. He has 440 subscribers, but yeah, that's the title of his video. I watched 500 of flat Earth hours of YouTube videos. Like, really? And
So what?
you don't know shit. And he doesn't say any fact.
Doesn't mean anything.
Like, really?
Watching
Yeah, like,
500
really? You didn't look
hours
for
of flat
any
Earth
fact?
YouTube videos doesn't mean anything. Maybe he did,
Exactly.
but so what? Does it mean you've got really good
That's
information
what I
out of
said.
it?
So what?
Well, it's okay, fine. What was the main points and arguments that you got out of the 500 videos?
None. He didn't. He
Then
didn't
it was
show
a
me
waste of
any
his
video.
time.
He didn't. It was a waste of his time. Exactly.
But that's a lot of flat earthers, right? That's why we stand in opposition to a lot of flat earthers, because a lot of them do poison. They do put out information that's useless, time-wasting information. Somebody described the what was his name? Something Fong. Can't remember his first name.
The Gary Fong.
Gary Fong, right? Gary Fong. Somebody described it in my comments section as a piss-covered breadcrumb. And I was like, that's a fairly appropriate description. It kind of alludes to the something being wrong here from Gary Fong.
So what's your read on him as a person, looking at as he responded or anything? Like, what's your outlook on it?
I don't know.
I think he's just a smart guy that knows his field, and he came across there's a fork in the road for him. That's what I think about it. I think he's a smart individual. I think he'll figure it out.
There's only a certain percentage of the public that can be sustained with the level of cognitive dissonance that the people we're currently assessing have got in regards to this subject matter. There's only so much apologetics that if the average man sees the learned man making apologetics or double checking something they thought was correct already and then questioning it after the fact with a bit of a puzzled look on their face, when enough people are doing that in the general day-to-day populace, your average Joe will lose all faith. Well, at that point, that's it. That's game over. People will stop having sympathy for the globe.
I like the fact that Gary Fong, found a subject that he is very knowledgeable in, and he found errors with a colliding story. That's a very good way to come to flat Earth. I think it's a very genuine way, and he really he'll stand against anyone at NASA and says, "No, this camera's not going to do that." That's what I like about that video.
No, I don't. He's not going to do that in an area that's not real. Well, I mean, fine.
No, that it opened his eyes to that, Nathan. He now has that question in his mind now. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe.
And to go back to what you guys...
Go on.
I was just going to say, to go back to what you were saying, that guy was watching so many hours. It could have been just anti-FE videos. Remember you went on that one debate outside of this platform, Nathan? And he said he do research, but he just came up with all the anti stuff.
Right.
He may have just watched all the anti stuff.
Yeah, these are surface dwellers, right? So they're going to scratch the surface by typing in flat Earth to a search engine, and every result that comes up, he spent 500 hours watching Simon Dan and Dave McKeegan soundly. You're like, all right, okay. That's you researching flat Earth, is it? Okay.
You know what's crazy? We used to Google stuff, right? People, we used to Google stuff. Now everyone says Google is useless because all the real info is on other websites that Google does not own, like TikTok and stuff like that. But I remember the Google search was useful. Now it's useless because they're going to give you authoritative
it's just a
content.
conduit. It's like saying roads are useless because they don't all lead to McDonald's. It's like, well, no, some roads do. What are you talking about? Google's just a search engine. Well, you can search flat Earth and find anti-flat Earth, but you can search and find actual flat Earth information. A lot of it propaganda laden. But if you search and search and search and search and search and search, you can eventually find us, right? So it's just how you use the search engine. It's just a conduit.
Yeah, well, it's authoritative media is going to be put forth. We know that.
Hello, mic check.
Hello. Preferred content, indeed.
Yeah, so I mean that's a problem. See, TikTok does not do that, so that's why it's better.
That's
Yes.
probably got something to do with the quality of most of the flat Earth content on there, though, rather than they're happy for the nonsense to be out there, aren't they?
Yeah, well, at least we got a standing chance of being viewed on there.
I posted that video link again in Master D. Did you actually watch that Duper Poons video, Nathan?
I didn't, sorry. Is that the one you just
Put all of
posted?
the anti-flat earthers out of work because he made that on an AI program and it's about the same quality as a Dave McKeegan video.
What is it?
Just a basic, logical fallacy, globe proof, about 2 minutes long, but it's quite interesting that you can make. I knew you could make pictures with an algorithm, but I didn't know you could actually make a whole video.
Dave McKeegan, he won't shut up about flat
Humans
Earth
have been fascinated with the shape of the Earth. Is it flat? Is it round? Or is it something else entirely? Despite overwhelming evidence, there are still those who believe the Earth is flat. But today, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to show you that the Earth is, indeed, a sphere. The first evidence comes from the fact that the Earth casts a round shadow on the Moon during a lunar eclipse.
A red, did you say? Oh, round. What, a red shadow. Okay, that's not a proof that the Earth's a sphere. Right, number one, how do we know it's a shadow? Number two, why would it turn red? Number three, why do we have selenium in eclipses?
If the Earth were flat, the shadow would be rectangular, but it's not.
Okay, so a straw man claim that in a heliocentric model, a flat Earth pizza pie in a vacuum would create a square shadow? No.
It's round. Another piece of evidence is the way the horizon appears to curve.
The horizon is the derivation of the word horizontal. It doesn't appear to curve. It presents itself as flat. It's utilised to attain flat baselines, to measure angles, to give you the grid system that made the globe.
As ships sail away from us, they seem to disappear over the horizon.
All right, boats fall over the edge, do they? No, they don't. The horizon's not Earth curve. If the horizon was Earth curve, it would be at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, as laid down in the Earth curve maths. We can show with the black swan image it's beyond 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Therefore, the physical hill you think the boats are falling over has physically moved beyond the things that formerly fell over it, debunking the notion that the horizon is an Earth curve edge for boats to fall over.
If the Earth were flat,
Going back to 2015, really?
That's AI compiling 2015 arguments.
we would still be able to see the entire ship. But if you stand on a hill or climb a tall building,
You increase the elevation angle, so you widen your angle to the deck, increasing the ability to resolve information because you have a wider angle to it. Meanwhile, in Earth curve maths, the feet value or meters value that will be ascribed to the target doesn't change with distance, ergo ignoring perspective and calling it Earth curve.
you can see farther and farther in the distance, as if the horizon were curving away from you.
As if the angle was opening up as you increase in elevation with respect to the deck that's measured flat.
And then there's the ultimate evidence: images of the Earth from space.
Sky vacuum second law of thermodynamics violation. You can't take pictures from a place that isn't real. If the sky was a vacuum, to take pictures of Earth from space, we'd all be dead. The sky would be a place that the high pressure gas we are filling would want to introduce itself to, because it would be a low pressure system. That's a sky vacuum. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. We'd all be dead. There are no pictures from space. There are no trips to the moon. There are no trips to planets.
From space, the Earth clearly appears round. We've sent people and probes into space.
These are CGI images, clearly CGI images, and the stop motion animation that we got from the moon landings was woeful. Meanwhile, this is claimed to be 10 to the minus 17 torr, and this is claimed to be a high pressure gas, and in this image they are right next to each other. The black is a vacuum, this is a high pressure gas. The gas would fill this space. This picture is fake.
And they've all come back with the same conclusion. The Earth is a sphere.
What, from the cartoons and CGI renderings of a sky vacuum next to a high pressure gas? Yeah, they're all fake pictures.
So, there you have it. The evidence is overwhelming.
Not really, I debunked it. We've only been covering this for about 4 minutes.
The Earth is a sphere, not flat.
The sphere model comes from a flat Earth elevation angle measurement to Polaris to give you latitude lines to wrap that grid that is flat and utilised in GPS flat around a sphere. In other words, the sphere, you believe is proven by these fallacious arguments, is derived from a flat Earth. So no, definitely not conclusive, definitely easy to debunk, definitely done before we even start the live show.
It's time to put this debate to rest and move on to more important questions about our planet.
Planet? No, planet would be a sphere in a sky vacuum. But the debate is over. We have proven every single claim in this video wrong, and can prove that Earth is measured flat, navigated flat, and obviously, observably flat. Oh, wasn't that lovely?
Is that any worse than a Dave McKeegan video, is my question.
About the same standard.
So they're out of work.
Yeah, I mean, Dave McKeegan's just your average normie parrot who's found himself in a subject matter that gets instantly promoted if he covers it in any way, shape or form, good or bad. He'll instantly get 100,000 views. So he's going, hey, I'll just dig around on Google until I find something that seems to be overcoming this argument at surface level. Well, there you go. That's what the AI can do too.
We tried doing our own video last night, typed in that the Earth is a stationary plane or something to that effect, and it came up with, even though the Earth looks like a stationary plane, it's actually an oblate spheroid. It wouldn't make the video a flat Earth video.
Right, it's programmed not to. I don't know if they still teach this in schools, but garbage in, garbage out. The AI, as much as they say it's self-learning, is only as good as the information it receives. And the information it receives is all man's information, documented, that it can resource.
It's machine learning at best.
Right. Well, it's never going to be as intelligent as the person that can think on their feet, that can solve complex problems, that can work outside the box. What it can do is reference all of the errors that humanity has ever documented and the inferences that come from them, and then learn that's what the rhetoric should be. So as it disseminates its information, it's pooling the information from men who have said, yes, Earth appears flat, but it's ultimately a sphere. And because that has no justification behind it, that's what the AI will present, because that's how it's presented to it, as it gets it for its resource, as it uses it as a resource, whatever a man has referenced. So garbage in, garbage out. I've shared the G+ link, by the way.
You know, I always thought about machine learning and AI. Like, why don't you put all the laws in there and just make like a little app and then, you know, use that as our justice system?
Yeah, that might happen.
Because who's turning to page 540 in those big dusty ass books? We might as well get some type of machine learning to reference it, right?
Well, since there's a quiet spot, I was thinking about how much this word is getting out there. Because I remember at church I was talking about something about like scientists like Einstein, Tesla, and somebody said something about if the Earth was flat, and I didn't say anything. I didn't touch the subject, right? But it made me realize, okay, this word is in the psyche of people out there, right? Even if I don't bring it up, it's out there. People are aware of it.
Oh, you know what I like
I've been
doing
saying it for a long time. Well, let me ask a question like this.
somebody's.
Can I
All right.
ask him a question? Is that the only place where the word science is? I think it's in Timothy when he says science falsely called or something like that. Is that the only
So
place in
false
Scripture?
that I'm aware
And
of.
my question is why? Why would it only be there?
Science is a new word. That's an English translation. So at that point,
Okay,
that's
so
probably
when
the
did it
most
come in?
appropriate word. Yeah. You always go to the Greek if you've got a question like that.
You know what I like doing whenever
What was the
just
original
in a
word?
casual when I'm in a casual situation and somebody's doing some type of math or some shit, I'll just say that's that flat earth math or some shit like that, and it always gets a chuckle out of someone. I just love saying it.
Adam, what was the original word then?
Don't know. So what's the
Gnosis,
passage?
knowing, knowledge.
There you go.
So science, you could say, is a form of knowledge, right?
And particularly if you're going back to a very old translation, then yes, the word to know the science of something would be applicable to it being a referenced piece of information or catalogue of information or a body of work about a topic. That would be the equivalent, the correct use then, wouldn't it? As opposed to what we're fighting for, it's distinction.
I'm looking at the old Webster dictionary, and it has a couple of definitions for science.
What's the
But I don't.
passage in the Bible, Neil?
O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and the oppositions of science falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. And he finishes with grace would be with thee and amen. That's the end of the First Timothy. But I'm looking at
So then
the
it don't even
old
apply
Webster.
then.
I'm looking at the old Webster definition of science, and I don't think I see the scientific method mentioned in here.
No, it won't be. What's the chapter and verse of Timothy? Timothy what?
First Timothy 6:20.
First Timothy 6.
So you said that it won't be in the old Webster dictionary, and why would that be?
No, I'm saying the meaning is going to be an old meaning, isn't it? It's not going to have the modern
Right. So
or scientific method attenuated to it.
So when did the scientific method come to be part of the definition?
Bunch of philosophers
You're
got
going to be
together.
well. Funnily enough, it's going to be a similar time to the writing of the Bible, or I would suggest that at that point that's the formation. It wasn't called scientific method then, but you're going to have Francis Bacon at the same time as the King James Version, both being translated, and it would be known as Baconian method. So I suppose, if anything, it'd be referenced like that, or empiricism. Whereas I think you could happily use the word science back then in terms
Right.
of knowledge.
So back in that day, that translation was appropriate, you could say.
Yeah, you're not gonna. No one's gonna go science, as in no one's gonna do a Nathan on him and define the method or its distinguishment. That's not
Right.
been developed yet, has it? So it can
Right.
only have the old meaning.
Right.
And Daniel 1 verse 4 as well, science is mentioned. That's the only other one I can find.
What does
Say
it
that
say?
again, Daniel.
1 verse 4.
Daniel 1 verse 4. Let's see. Okay. All right. Yeah, it does in the King James. Okay. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning in knowledge and understanding science, and such as the
Wow.
ability in them to stand in the king's palace, as whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So remember Daniel and his compadre Meshach, Abednego, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right?
No, Shadrach, Meshach, and a big Negro.
That's interesting because it mentions both knowledge and science in the same passage. Different words.
Yeah, knowledge and understanding, cunning knowledge and understanding science. Well, let's see what the word science here means. Why not?
Maybe they mean understanding the pseudoscience that's about to come out.
And the Greek word here is mada, and it means, according to Strong's, intelligence or consciousness. And it was translated to knowledge, science, and thought in the King James.
I've just gone. I like going to the Derby if I'm going to want to read it in English, not the Greek. So I've gone to Derby translation. So, O Timotheus, keep the entrusted deposit, avoiding profane, vain babblings and oppositions of false named knowledge. That's a more literal English translation of what the original Greek is. So it's not science. So at some point, someone thinks science is the most appropriate, but the Derby, which is a more literal, says of false named knowledge. So I suppose the correct word would be pseudoscience.
Yeah, I was about to say, you just took the words out of my mouth. So, but it's
Hold
more.
on, I said that.
But it's more appropriate than ever, isn't it? Because contextually, when you hear science, it sounds like you should decry science. But that's what it's being called. And in the other passage, it says falsely named. Well, that is pseudoscience. It's alluding to pseudoscience in a very strong and less than literal way because it specifically says science. But that's where the deception lies, isn't it? What we think is science, falsely named, is actually pseudoscience.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
All right, so good stuff.
Oh, was it? Where was
That's
the
what it's
other
describing, though.
translation?
Pseudoscience.
First
Yeah,
Timothy 4. I mean, First Daniel. Well,
First
it's
Daniel.
just Daniel. Daniel 1:4.
Daniel 1:4. I'll find that as well.
I don't know. Maybe my internet is bad.
Nathan, you got the review? I put it after you linked for today.
How you doing, Ted?
Yeah,
What's
I've got
with
it
the new
queued up.
icon?
I don't know. It won't let me in the other one. I have to type in my name.
I remember you said that yesterday. I had a hard time yesterday, too.
Chapter 1,
So
verse
this-
4, yeah?
Yep.
Right. On 10th, and then I'll read it.
No, I was just going to say this video, this guy goes through 3 versions of gravity, and it's comical because it doesn't even exist. So you should have some fun.
Oh, this is interesting. Right. Use in whom was no blemish, and of goodly countenance, skillful in all wisdom, and acquainted with knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace. Understanding science, so understanding knowledge, I would suggest. Then he uses the word knowledge, as Paul said later.
It's the word is knowledge, is gnosis in Greek as well. It's knowledge. So pseudo knowledge, false knowledge.
And
So,
acquainted
correct.
with knowledge
Pseudoscience.
and understanding science.
Yeah,
Now
definitely
there,
right.
that says cause and effect, differentiating with knowledge.
Yes, but it's still very appropriate if you ask me.
Pseudoscience.
The other one was clear pseudoscience for me, Neil, when you check the different translations. One's not so. I would suggest it's no blemish, of goodly countenance, skillful in all wisdom, acquainted with knowledge, and understanding science. And if I say cause and effect there, for our meaning, you've got knowledge. It's not just the knowledge of a subject, it's differentiated in the same sentence, knowledge and science. It's saying if you've got all these good things, knowledge and understanding science, which to me is what is cause and effect, understanding it, and such ability in them to stand in the king's palace. So they're of good countenance as well, people.
There's three things mentioned here: wisdom, knowledge, and understanding science.
Yeah. That one's science to me. That is to actually understand it, as opposed to the previous one in Timothy,
Yeah.
which is to make a suggestion of pseudoscience.
Strong says intelligence or consciousness, and it was translated to knowledge, science, and thought. So,
When was science? When was the scientific method formulated?
Yeah, we went
that's
through
what I
this.
asked earlier.
I said earlier, to me, you start off with bacon. It would be called Baconian method then. So it's the if you're looking at King James, then I would suggest the word science would have the old meaning. Here, this is an, I think, mid-1800s translation, the Derby. And like I said, this is not to pass a message. It's not to best translate the spiritual meaning of the Bible. This translation's done to best give the most literal translation of the Greek. So it's interesting that he makes the distinction in Timothy and Daniel. He's aware of the words, as we would understand them, I think, in this translation, and he makes that distinction.
When I was reading up on it, I don't know their names, but they said that's when a bunch of philosophers got together and created the scientific method.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't
Alright, I
matter
got
who got it doesn't matter who got together to establish it. It's empirical and it's either A or B, or I mean, it's simple. It's
Agreed.
if they've used it, as Nathan says, and others, they steal the valor of it and call calculations and things they can't prove science.
Well, they just don't want to go that extra step.
Very good, John.
I was going to say, nobody really wants to go that extra step of validating what they observe. It's so much easier just to observe something and then, calculate what you think's happening. I mean, what's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with that is over on the other side, that's what they throw up. It was really only put together by a bunch of philosophers. But like Ted said, it's empirical. What's the difference?
Well, you remember when Nathan...
And then they claim that it's only sixth grade science, that we got to go to a higher learning. So if they want you to go on to learn pseudoscience.
Remember when Matthew Withers and Nathan had that back and forth, and Nathan said, what would ever possess you to think a shadow proved that you were living on the curve? I mean, how does a shadow do that? And so, in the Matthew Witness confession, well, we assumed the Earth is a globe. We didn't. Eratosthenes didn't prove the radius of the Earth. Well, all the storylines say he did.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you're currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by the Adam Meakin, Refracted Curvature, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
You bunch of pseudo scientists.
Good morning,
Afternoon, everyone.
Good morning, good morning. I read one of the comments, I think it was from Paul, the guy who recently got me halfway to buying an amplifier, which I'm very grateful for. Another one blew up today, by the way, Paul. Just not hinting that you should get me another amplifier, just saying that one of the other ones that was a temporary substitute for a new one that came that was faulty was used in substitution of the new one that came that was faulty, and now the old substitute one has also blown up. Just one of those things with me and amplifiers. They seem to blow up around me constantly. Anyway, just thought I'd let you all know. So, yeah, I probably will reiterate that GoFundMe campaign and change it to a Give, Send, Go campaign so it actually has some success. Because now, if the amp that I've got that's new goes, then that's it. The show ends, literally, because I've got nothing else to run it with. But there we go, that's life. Anyway, let's move on. In the comments, that was the whole point of me bringing Paul up. He suggested that we should actually do a couple of shows every now and then, doing the full rendition of the housekeeping questions. So in the spirit of that, I want to do it now, although we have got a video to cover. But just, unless you've got a concise answer that doesn't open up the debate or discussion in regards to the housekeeping questions, but does answer it without just a simple yes or no, then, you know, offer up that rendition and hopefully we'll rattle through housekeeping in the space of maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll start at the beginning. Any evidence
Is Paul
of
doing it?
Paul? I mean, he can join in
Yeah,
if you want.
why don't Paul answer it?
He doesn't have to. No pressure, Paul. You can answer if you wish. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that's a horizon, formally, as of 2020, known as Earth curvature?
It only exists in the maths below surface level.
Bloody good answer. There you go. You picked the right man there, Adam. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
You'll need R for that.
Yeah, you will. You'll need an Earth radius for axial rotation. That's correct. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Whisper it, Paul.
This would be an appropriate time for someone to whisper Black Swan.
Black Swan.
There we go. There it is. Black Swan. If the Earth was a sphere, radius 3959 miles, then every distance to the horizon could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, as laid down in the Earth curve mathematics. The distance to the horizon in the Black Swan is beyond the geometric limitations of the Earth curve mathematics at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Therefore, the horizon is not Earth curve, and the Earth is not a sphere. You cannot derive an R value from a bent tangent point horizon. We have no R value. It's not capable of being measured. Earth isn't a sphere. The horizon's not an Earth curve. Black Swan.
Funny thing is they don't accept that. They said it's just one photo. Confirming.
It doesn't matter what
That's
they
why it's the
accept,
Black
because
Swan.
it doesn't matter what they accept. You can only calculate the radius of Earth from a flat plane.
Speaking of which, is there any evidence you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
I'm still waiting to hear from Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has avoided the question, or maybe he's just avoiding us.
Is there any scientific evidence of gravity?
When you say science, you mean cause and effect?
When you say gravity, what do you mean?
You want me to clarify both? I say, is there any hypothesis-based cause and effect reasoning, with systematic experimentation being excluded, because at this stage we're only asking for the hypothesis, but that comes in the next question. So in this case, it's any standard of cause and effect reasoning based on a hypothesis to support the notion of the current pseudo-Riemannian force space-time bending. That would be the more accurate question, Adam.
Then I'd say no.
Any single
What about-
viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Impossible.
No, they can only make observations. They can't test them.
Correct. They've got plenty of phenomena, but they can't formulate any of it into a cause and effect reasoning hypothesis, scientific prediction. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating...
And in all
Go on, Adam.
likelihood,
Go on.
they'll need R for that.
One more time.
In all likelihood, whatever they're going to do, they'll need R for that.
Yes, you'll
'Cause
need
it's
a
not
radius
to
value.
preclude that they couldn't do science, because it's not beyond the wit of man. It's just highly improbable when you are looking at cause and effect relationships and you're talking about celestial objects.
Indeed, you're going to need R for that. Speaking of things that need R, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
I don't know. That cracks me up all the time. No, unless you're going to talk about the Earth sonogram that they say.
That
Does
requires
require a flat plane.
almost an echo. Go on, you go, John.
Yeah, the sonograms they're talking about require a flat plane to measure. So no.
Oh
that
dear.
won't work.
Just to expand on that a little bit, that requires return angle measurements reference to a plane. So the angle that they receive the signal with, that uses a flat plane.
It does, but then they obviously then need R to pervert that.
Correct.
And apply the figures too, but you would need R for that.
Speaking of things you need R for, any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No, because we don't know what the sun is.
What evidence would you accept, Nathan?
You put a tape measure on it, I'd be, remiss if I ignored that.
That ain't happening, so no.
They need R for that too.
You might be able to measure where it appears to be to the observer, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to bump into a thing when you try that.
We're almost there at the end of housekeeping before Arwin makes this tail out forever.
Yeah, but
No.
then you can't measure it.
The not actual size wouldn't be the distance, because that's an actual measurement. So yes, we can infer things that aren't actual by taking not actual, aka apparent measurements, Arwin, but that wouldn't give us the distance to the sun.
That's not.
Give you
They
the
don't. They
apparent
don't
distance.
take.
We were so close, ladies and gentlemen, to keeping this to under
apparent.
5 minutes.
I'm nearly there. I will round. I was about to say they don't take apparent. They have physical, and in their world, the distance to the sun, you will need R for that.
That's correct. I did preface the question by saying, speaking of things we will need R for. Meanwhile, any evidence that you can have gas pressure, which we are all breathing, without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon.
Gas has weight and electrostatics.
Even if you had R, you would still need a container. And the things that Neil just mentioned doesn't affect gas.
And you can do it without one container, but then you'd actually need 3 containers.
Well, you'd need gas under pressure in the first instance. If you're going to demonstrate it here, you're going to have to explain why you've got gas pressure in the first instance if the sky is a vacuum. But further to that, you might need another couple of containers to produce a contained pressurized gas to introduce to a second container that doesn't necessarily have a lid on it, to show that you can have gas pressure without a container when actually utilizing 3 containers.
Well, the only real way to do it is to basically redefine the word container, right? And then you can do it.
Let's not do that. The sky is not a vacuum. If the sky was a vacuum, then the gas we breathe at high pressure would vacate into the lower pressure system, in line with entropic law. High pressure to low pressure. Yeah, the sky vacuum would be a very low pressure that the high pressure gas we're breathing would want to move into. We'd all be dead. We'd have never developed gas pressure in the first place because there'd be nothing for the pressure to press upon. So the sky is fake if you claim it's a vacuum.
Next.
Okay, that was good. Maybe 10 minutes. Not bad. Not bad. And good answers. Well done, everybody. Okay. This is called Is Gravity a Force by FermiLab. So, you know the routine if you're a regular to the show. What you do is you go to this person's video and in the nicest possible way, say, Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. If you want to elaborate that we responded to his video, that's fine, so long as you keep it clean, so long as you keep it polite, so that your comment simply doesn't get immediately removed by the videographer, in this case FermiLab. So, there's the link, it's going by, and I want you to do this now, as in immediately. If you're watching this live, and there's a good 60 people watching, and I haven't been live very long, surprising considering we were at the end of housekeeping, and we're actually going to start this video. Nevertheless, go to this guy's video and let him know, Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Hopefully, the idea behind this is were FermiLab to respond and say, no, you're taking a part of our claimed reification of a fourth dimensional pseudo-time dimension being bent to have Earth move up at 9.8 meters per second for the sake of argument. If he wants to challenge that, he can hopefully put a link to this video in his, so that we might actually, reach some algorithmic prowess that isn't afforded to us by YouTube themselves. So that's the idea, that he would actually put my link to my video in his, should he respond. Chance would be a fine thing. Anyway, we're going to cover this. So, yeah, hopefully there's a few people while I've been wittering that have actually been to his video and let him know that we have responded. And this won't be like every other day when we go to press the play button and immediately we have a little sidebar. Let's go. Let's do this.
A couple of videos ago, I spoke about the speed of gravity. In it, I said something about the force of gravity, and that unleashed a firestorm in the comment section, with lots of people admonishing me, saying that gravity isn't a force. That turns out to be an interesting question with lots of subtle, philosophical, tautological, and linguistic implications.
Well, he's already wrong. When you say gravity is not a force, that isn't a question. He said that's an interesting question. No, it's a statement of fact. But why have you repurposed the statement of fact into a question when it isn't one? Is gravity a force would be a question. The statement of fact that gravity is not a force is not a question. Let's just get that clear straight off the bat. We're only 20 seconds in and we're already having to explain the difference between statements and questions. But there we go.
And how is it philosophically interesting? I mean, isn't this about physics? What?
Yep.
What better way to spend the next 10 minutes or so?
I assure you this is going to take longer than 10 minutes. Need this much drama? Really? Seriously? I mean, I know my dramatic music at the beginning, but there might be a blazing row that goes on in this show. I mean, bloody hell.
British journalist Ian Betteridge, and it states that any headline that ends at a question mark can be answered by the word no. So
gravity's not a force? Where's the question mark at the end of that statement of fact? There isn't one. Did we just cover this? I'm having deja vu or something. What's going on?
Oh, if that particular aphorism is true, we have our answer. This is my shortest video ever. I'm giving Ian a break. Please share. Physics is everything. Done. On the other hand, perhaps that's a bit hasty. Maybe we need to dig into it a bit deeper. To do this right, we first need to ask ourselves, what is a force?
Not gravity.
According to Merriam-Webster, the relevant definition of force is an agency or influence that, if applied to a free body, results chiefly in an acceleration of the body and sometimes in elastic deformation and other effects. Other dictionaries say similar things. And because physics definitions are often different than colloquial ones, I dug up my freshman introductory physics textbook, Survey, if you want to look it up. And it says that a force is that which causes a body to accelerate.
Just so I can be clear, is anybody in disagreement at this stage?
I don't think that's the correct definition of a force. Force in physics would be anything that causes pressure over an area.
Thank you.
But it also notes that not all forces cause motion. If there are forces that counteract one another, like how gravity pulls me down, but the floor pushes me up.
Sorry, both of those are assumptions. One of which includes the force of gravity, and the other includes the ground moving upwards. So anybody observe either of these things he's just assumed? No? Why have you juxtaposed two things that don't happen together? Like they cancel each other out. It sounds like you've invented something to put a zero scale on something with a 1 value. Like 1g when we're standing still. Yeah?
Nathan, he's not assuming, he's declaring. Sounds like to me, he's declaring it.
And the net result is that I don't move. So there are a couple of different levels of understanding gravity. The first complicated one is from Newton. He related force and acceleration. Force was mass times acceleration. And of course, force made things move. So at least as far as Newton is concerned, gravity is most certainly a force.
Well, yeah, but he was superseded 108 years ago by Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian force space-time bending. And the fact that gas behaviour, which in the vernacular of Newton would have mass, would go down at 9.8 metres per second squared based on his assertions of the downward bias of his force of gravity superseded 108 years ago. So no, you can just show gas behaviour to debunk Newton. Gas doesn't go down, go boom boom at 9.8 metres per second. It expands in all directions to fill whatever volume it's got. Well, according to Newton, mass is something you can ascribe to gas. And it's not doing what his force is claimed to claim it does. Go on.
Yeah, sorry. Wasn't it the other day Adam read the text from Newton, and then it wasn't until 300 years later that someone picked it up and gave it a different interpretation? I put it in Master D. I could read it if you like.
Yes, please.
It is inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without the mediation of something else which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact, as it must be. If gravitation, in the sense of Epicurus, be essential and inherent in it, and this is one reason why I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me. The gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum, without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, but whether this agent be material or immaterial, I have left open to the consideration of my readers.
So,
Yeah, let's give him gravity.
No. Yeah, exactly. Let's name gravity after him. Well, CV boys, Reverend John Michel and Cavendish have got this notion, and it's been falsely ascribed to Newton. And he vehemently wants no part of it, as you've just heard. in a letter he wrote to someone else. Anyway, that's Newtonian gravity for you. If you are strongly opposed to something, you'll end up having it named after you. That's
and interestingly, Newton just indicted the guy doing this video and saying that he didn't have a competent faculty of thinking.
Indeed. Absolutely correct. FermiLab, you cited sources humiliating you, my friend.
He didn't really know how it worked, but it was a force. One mass somehow reached across the distance and tugged at another mass, causing it to move.
Could you just read that bit again?
Yeah, I mean, he just said the opposite, right?
My bad. By and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Let's just hear FermiLab one more time.
Force. He didn't really know how it worked, but it was a force. One mass somehow reached across the distance and tugged at another mass, causing it to move.
Not according to Newton himself, and he also thinks you're an idiot for asserting it. Yeah, you need to look up who actually gave you this concept, because it would be Reverend John Michel, C.V. Boys, and Cavendish, not Newton. He says you're stupid. That anybody who thinks this is the case would be an idiot. No man with cognitive faculties could think this. Yeah? That's you. Dumb. According to Newton, I'm just saying it's a fact. Again, it's not a question mark at the end of this. That is a fact. According to Newton, you are stupid. Fact. Not a question.
That, as far as Newton is concerned, is super important. What it really means...
As far as Newton is concerned, why was that in quotes? See, we've just quoted Newton, like things he actually said, whereas you're saying as far as Newton is concerned, in quotes. So you're just divining a dead man's thoughts and putting it in quotation marks. What the hell?
This is according to Newton's theoretical framework. The problem arises in 1915 when this troublemaker came up with a different theory of gravity.
Not a theory. A theory would be based on scientific validation through hypothesis-driven experimentation. Einstein didn't offer that. Neither did the so-called Newtonian gravity. None of this is science. This is not a theory. The fact that it superseded Newtonian nonsense that had gas go down, go boom, boom, doesn't make it any more or less valid. It isn't. But it definitely isn't a theory. Colloquially speaking, did you look up what theory meant in your little book? Obviously not.
Combined with some insights from one of his professors, a guy by the name Herman Minkowski, we now treat gravity very differently.
Treat it? We treat it, do we? Show it me, so I can understand how I need to treat it. Because what you're about to show me is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional grid system, as opposed to a fourth-dimensional space-time bending, which is what you're about to tell me this is. Anybody else care to count how many dimensions are being depicted in this image? How many dimensions are being depicted in this image? Anybody who's mathematically inclined.
There's only 3 being shown.
Let's just get that clear from Adam, who's a mathematician. There are 3 depicted dimensions on this two-dimensional screen representation of what is about to be talked about, correct? 3.
Yeah.
In Einstein and Minkowski's formulation of Einstein's theory of general relativity, what was really going on was mass distorted space, which is a very weird concept.
Right, mass distorting space. So the distortion that the mass is causing is in the space. Now, not in length, breadth, and depth, but in the pseudo fourth dimension of time. So that is what's being distorted, but yet it's not depicted here. Why have you shown us a 3-dimensional quasi-Cartesian grid with the third dimension in the x-axis being bent by mass, when in Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian force space-timing being bent, it would be a time dimension that's bent, not depicted here? Just lies. This is deceit. Isn't it, FermiLab? That's not what you're showing us. You're telling us about space-time bending and showing us 3D space.
This picture shows you how it is often portrayed.
Really? Yeah, that's how I could call it out as bullshit before you even got to describing it, because this isn't showing the bending of space-time.
Far from any mass, space is what is called flat, meaning you can draw it in a three-dimensional grid of straight lines.
A flat would be two-dimensional, though, wouldn't it? So what you're saying, very quickly doing it, unlike the other people who labour this point at nausea, you're saying flat, two-dimensional, can be described as three-dimensional. That's what he's just said. Let's just hear it again, because that was about as concise as I've ever heard this do-si-do been done.
How it is often portrayed. Far from any mass, space is what is called flat, meaning you can draw it in a three-dimensional grid of straight.
Sorry, flat, meaning you can draw it in a three-dimensional grid. So flat would be two-dimensional. So here's a point, it's a dot. You can draw it as a two-dimensional line. Well, that would make it a two-dimensional line, though, wouldn't it? But it's a dot. So what the hell what are you babbling about? If you've got something that's flat, it's not three-dimensional, is it? Are you an idiot? No, he's not an idiot, he's a deceiver. Because what he's just told you is something that's flat, two-dimensional, can be three-dimensional. Why? Well, because when he shows you something three-dimensional, like the diagram he just showed you, he'll tell you that that represents four dimensions, space-time included. Lies. It doesn't.
Why did he say the word drive?
I don't know. Derive,
Yeah,
he means deceive. Derive, he means bullshit.
Just
Straight
replay
lines.
it again.
No, not a third time.
This is called Cartesian space. In
That's length, breadth, and depth. Doesn't include space-time.
Cartesian space, an object will travel in a straight line. Essentially, it follows the direction of space. This is equivalent to Newton's first law, which says that an object in motion will continue in motion unless acted upon by an outside force.
The laws of motion of Newton were not right. End quote, Richard Feynman.
However, when mass is introduced to the picture, it bends space.
No. Not according to Einstein. You keep saying it. You keep saying bend space. Yeah, what, in a Cartesian system? Well, no, in Einsteinian, it's space-time that's bent by the uneven distribution of mass, and that space-time being bent is gravity, according to the pseudo-geometry.
If you then introduce another mass, that second mass still follows the lines of space, but these lines of space are bent. Thus, in the Einstein and Minkowski formulation of gravity, gravity isn't a force like Newton claimed. Objects still move in the direction space is bent, but from the perspective of a person thinking that space is flat, they will say that the direction the object moves is curved.
So if it's flat, two-dimensional, you can describe it as three-dimensional. Well, no. Number one, you're one dimension short of Einsteinian because it's fourth-dimensionally bending the space-time, not bending the space. The Cartesian isn't the thing that's being bent. The three-dimensional system isn't the thing that's bent. The thing that's bent, very specifically in Einstein's mathematics, is space-time. And the cause of the space-time bending is the thing that we experience in physicality, that would be the mass. The three-dimensional uneven distribution thereof causes the bending of space-time in Einstein's maths. So either you simply don't understand that it's not space that's being bent, it's space-time in Einstein. And when you describe the flat universe described in the heliocentric model, it isn't akin to the do-si-do normally done between 2 and 3 dimensions to take you from 3 to 4. You seem to have stopped short one dimension, FermiLab. Why would that be? I would postulate that it's because you don't understand what you're talking about.
So the object looks like it's experiencing a force, but that's because the shape of space isn't obvious. And again, the phrase...
So the shape of space. Let me get it right. I draw out length, breadth, depth, X, Y, Z. I draw out this grid that he just described, right? And it's empty. It's just the grid used to reference something that may be placed in the grid. That is the space we have to depict something. Whereas what he has just literally said is the shape of space. There is no shape of space. How can you have the shape of the Euclidean or, Cartesian grid that's used to define things as points in space? That doesn't have a shape. Unless you're going to call it the box itself, but that's the reference system. That's the whole point, though, isn't it? Turn the mathematical reference system into an extra dimension. But in this instance, stopping short of actually describing the fourth dimension that Einstein has. Shout out to James Richard. One cannot bend space-time, for it is a concept only. No observation, isolation, vary/manipulation of or control. Pseudoscience. P.S. You forgot an SC. Did I? Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you for the super chat, James. Really appreciate it. And the other one was from you also. A force either pushes or pulls, according to Einstein. Gravity does neither. Quote, gravity is not some invisible magical force, end quote. That's paraphrasing Einstein. Thank you very much indeed for both of the super chats. James, I really appreciate the support. Thank you very, very much indeed. I'll just stick the first one you stuck up on screen for you. There it is.
Phrase in the Einstein and Minkowski formulation of gravity is important here. It translates to the more formal, within the theoretical construct of general relativity.
Not a theory. Theoretical in colloquial terms, as in you've just got an idea of how things might work if you invent another dimension.
Gravity is not a force, but rather a distortion of space.
No, a distortion of space-time. The fourth dimension. The geodesic is in space-time. The curve that you just described when appearing to travel along a 2D grid system. Yeah? You said it would appear curved. Well, you can still curve things in a Cartesian grid system. It's called a curve. But that isn't what's occurring in Einstein's description. He's describing a geodesic in space-time. Why are you neglecting to mention the actual fourth dimension of pseudo-Riemannian force space-time? It's in the very title of the geometry, FermiLab. Is it just amateur night, Adam? What do you think? And there you have it. I agree.
And of course, that's the origin of those somewhat stuffy admonitions. Since Einstein's theory makes better predictions than...
Not a theory. Predictions in science are hypotheses. They predict the cause of an effect. In this instance, we haven't got any effect detailing, and you've got the dimension of the effect that you think you're describing as a non-force. One dimension short of Einstein's.
Newton's, then this settles things, right? Gravity isn't a force. Well, here is where we've gotten hasty. For one thing, we know that Einstein's theory of gravity is incomplete, and because of that, we need a...
It's not a theory. You don't have incomplete scientific theories. They just describe the results of an experiment. When you establish the cause of an effect you were studying in nature, the predictive part of it was the hypothesis. This guy doesn't know what science is.
Replacement theory, or at least an extension, which we generically call quantum gravity.
All right. No. Quantum mechanics is based on scientific experimentation also. The gravity bit is just based on pseudo-Riemannian force space-time bending, which doesn't happen because it's a pseudo-geometry. We don't exist in pseudo-geometry. Meanwhile, quantum mechanics is scientifically validated. So, no, don't steal valor.
Nathan.
Go ahead.
You have a replacement theory when theory comes at the end of an empirical test?
No. You don't replace it with anything. You don't argue with it. If you're going to report it, that would be the experimental evidence that you had at the end of the scientific method-based part of this, before the theory. You'd say A causes B. And if the journalist says, oh, well, what if A doesn't cause B? They go, no. The reason I'm reporting it to you is because we varied A and it caused B. Now, we won't vary A tomorrow and find it doesn't cause B. That's not how this works. Okay, so toddle along and report how A caused B. Our prediction was twofold. Our prediction was A will cause B and A won't cause B. Only one got validated. The other one was chucked away, discounted, removed, proved false. So we are left with an empirical outcome. That was what we did when we did science. But of course, these dicks, when they reference Newton, falsely ascribed to gravity as a force, and Einstein, the purveyor of pseudo-geometry, including an extra dimension not detailed by FermiLab, Yeah, when he talks about it, all he'll do is steal valor from actual science when talking about predictions. Because he doesn't have a prediction from Einstein or from Newton, falsely ascribed to gravity. He doesn't have either of those things. Science has predictions. They're called hypotheses. They predict the cause of an effect. We haven't even seen the effect. Nobody's showing us space-time bending. This guy thinks it's just, what did he call it? Space bending. Right? What, the empty Cartesian grid bending, as we witness it flat, but actually have a curve in the third dimension. Yes, it's just called a curve. You can have things that are curved in 3 dimensions, mate. Meanwhile, gravity bending as a result of the uneven distribution of mass would be Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian for space-time. It's got an extra dimension not mentioned by you. Learn your stuff, because this is useless.
Also, there's another problem. He introduced the idea of quantum into this, and quantum mechanics, Bell's theorem, within it has an inequality that shows the non-locality of particles, and relativity and classical mechanics are dependent upon the ideas of locality. So this has been experimentally shown, the non-locality of these particles. So his whole idea is destroyed just by introducing the word quantum into this.
Perfect. Much better summary than I gave in that regard. Thank you, John.
I made a video about quantum gravity, and I put a link in the description below.
Speaking of which, so this is FermiLab, and if you are just joining us, there's over 100 people watching. Thank you very much to all of you who shared the show. Really appreciate it. That's the only reason we've got 100 people watching. But I'm going to stick the link to FermiLab so that you, watching live right now, can go to his video, help him in the algorithm, leave a comment, expressly telling him that Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. And if you want to go on to explain that we've responded to his video, in the nicest possible way, of course, then let him know. We responded to your video. But there it is, there's the link. And hopefully if we have a little chit-chat amongst ourselves on the panel before we go back to responding to the video itself, that'll give people who are in the live stream chat enough opportunity to go and leave a comment right now on this guy's video and then come back to us when we respond a little bit further. But at this point, anybody else got any comments just while people are nipping off to give a little comment saying Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me?
Well, just a summary. First, he starts with Newton. Then he says, well, he wasn't exactly right because 108 years ago, this guy, and he shows Einstein and says, this character changed everything. And then he's now saying that guy is going to be incomplete because quantum gravity is going to come up next. So why does it keep changing?
He's using the word gravity to grease the skids. I mean, not gravity, quantum.
Wow, I'm glad we had this little segue because it's so boring that when people come back, they won't realize that they've even missed anything.
Well, my point is, why does something that is established and thousands of books were written on it and pseudoscience followed it, all of a sudden, well, we can discard that because now it's Einsteinian. Well, we can discard that. I mean, what's going on here? Where's the science? Where's the science?
No, that's the stolen valor part that Nathan mentioned, isn't it? This is what he's going to do. We're going to take the empiricism of quantum mechanics and try and, I think we mentioned it, how it's fudged together to try and maintain this quasi-Einsteinian Newtonian model of gravity still. So they're going to try and use mathematics to link quantum mechanics and these two just demonstrated false theories.
Another quick shout out to James Richards says, Nathan Oakley 1980, please share the show with everybody you know. Everybody. Thanks for the super chat, James. Okay, hopefully everyone's now rejoined us after going and leaving FermiLab a little comment saying Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. In the nicest possible manner, obviously. Hello, Quantum Eraser.
Good day. Problem is that none of the theories of quantum gravity have been validated. That means there are lots of different ways to imagine gravity.
What? None of them have been validated? Not end of statement, but That means there's lots of ways to employ imagination land. Jesus wept. What?
Also sounds like they have no agreed upon, they don't even have consensus opinion on what quantum gravity is. There are lots of them. And none of them are validated.
Yeah, wait a second, though. He said none of the theories were validated, so how can they be theories in the first place?
Yeah, we covered that. They're not.
Well, the thing is, by saying that none of the theories of quantum gravity have been validated, he's implicitly saying that the other theories of gravity have been validated, which is also false.
At this deeper and more fundamental level.
Sorry, go on, whoever that was.
I'm sorry, it's a train wreck. What's quantum gravity?
A stealing of the scientific validity of quantum mechanics and slapping it on the title of a failed pseudoscience of gravity.
Which gravity?
Einsteinian, fourth dimensional, pseudo-Riemannian, fourth space-time bending.
Can't have that. You can't. They're married bachelors. Everything in Einstein's horsepuckery violates Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And if you go by Richard Feynman, every statement in quantum mechanics is just a restatement of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So how this guy's a numpty.
Now, I can't talk in detail about every possible alternate theory of gravity.
Yeah, they're not theories.
Okay. Yeah.
Really, each idea should have a video of its own, and I've made a few, which you can watch if you want. But here, I will instead just sketch out some ideas. Just realize that each topic will only be mentioned and not receive a deep dive. So one's very simple and very...
yeah, just for the layman here, like me. Many theories of gravity. What's the theory again?
Oakley?
Go on,
it's a speculation. There's many speculations of gravity. In other words, that's what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. But in science, what's the theory?
A hypothesis or a group of related hypotheses that have been confirmed, validated by experimental tests.
So if this has gone through the scientific method somehow,
no,
it couldn't be many theories then.
It's the first one. It's the first one that QE labeled. When he says theory, do you want to just repeat your first definition of a colloquial theory, please, Quantum Eraser?
Speculation.
There are many speculations.
A very common idea is that quantum gravity is transmitted by the exchange of particles called gravitons.
So the non-locality of those particles, not a problem anymore. Thanks, John. Refractive curvature.
According to Freeman Dyson, gravitons don't exist and never will.
I was just going to ask, what's a graviton?
It doesn't exist.
One particle emits a graviton, which is absorbed by another, and this results in a gravitational attraction. This is very similar to the way electromagnetism works, in which one charged particle emits a photon.
Which is, he needs to show graviton. You need to show it. Period.
Is then absorbed by another, and the result is a force. Under this theoretical paradigm, gravity then becomes a force again. After all, if electromagnetism is a force and gravity is similar to electromagnetism, then it wouldn't be unreasonable to call gravity a force too.
I see. So if wardrobe door dilates time and space also dilates time, then it's not unreasonable to assume that we've got both wardrobes and space time bending because they're both very similar.
Yep, exactly.
What's that fallacy called?
Dumbass. Oh, sorry.
Of course, the nature of the gravity.
Go on, John. Refractive curvature.
I was going to say, I don't think there's any like formulation to that, but that is like the most messed up logic I've ever heard in my life.
Differs in the many theories of quantum gravity. In some superstring theories, in which the smallest building blocks of matter aren't particles, but rather tiny vibrating strings, The graviton is one particular vibrational mode of a string shaped kind of like a hula hoop.
Can you show us one? A string. Can you show us one?
At high energy, gravitons interact with particles and generate a gravitational force. In order for superstring theory to work mathematically,
what about physically?
At the energies that are found in space, the curvature of space-time...
Oh, now he's starting to call it the curvature of space-time. Why was it in the earlier descriptions you just said the bending of space? Was it because it was super complicated to introduce the fourth dimension, but now you've decided that you're going to introduce it when you describe quantum gravity? Why is that? It wasn't bending space-time a minute ago, but now suddenly you've remembered that it's a fourth dimension that you need to bend. When you show a three-dimensional depiction of it, maybe it was just much easier to not mention it earlier. It makes me get the impression that you're a deceptive shit. That's what it makes me feel. I don't know, maybe the audience agree, maybe we should do a little straw poll. I mean, did he leave out the fourth dimension when he juxtaposed two-dimensional flat territory being bent in a Cartesian system that could easily describe that bend as a bend? When he was actually describing pseudo-Riemannian force space-time in bent nature, but just forgetting to mention the fourth dimensional bit when he showed his two-dimensional representations of three-dimensional grid systems. Is he a lying shit type 1 now? Is he just maybe a bit forgetful about the fourth dimension that's very specific to Einstein's nonsense that he was talking about? Then type 2. Forgetful, 2, lying shit, number 1.
Can we talk about the usage of the word mathematically?
You can, but I'm just going to read out this super chat from James Richard before you do. I'll start that again. Electromagnetism is observable. It also can be isolated, manipulated, and controlled. Gravity cannot. Yeah, well said. Thank you for the super chat. Go ahead, 10th.
Yeah, why do these current day so-called scientists only do things with equations, calculations, mathematically? What, like you said, what can you show it to me physically? Is it because they can't and it only exists in the maths?
It does only exist in the maths. It's very specifically detailed that way when it's labeled as pseudo. It's a pseudo geometry.
Right, but to the common person, the way this guy talks and some of the words linking the other words, it's as if they're describing our reality through mathematics, but it's only in the mathematics because our reality bears no reference to it.
Correct.
Described by Einstein arises from gravitons vibrating in a coherent state, which sort of means synchronized vibrations. This looks like the curved space thing, but it has a different cause.
Like curved space thing, so now it's back to curved space. I don't get it. Now I think you're ignorant.
Then there's the idea of loop quantum gravity. In this theory, space-time is quantized, which...
I had a squeal. Go ahead.
I'm laughing. Loop, there's all different names now. How many names do we got for this gravity?
Look, right, when you've made a whole batch of crap sweets that taste like shit, but there's thousands of them, that just means there's more choice of crappy sweets, Neil!
Which means there is a shortest distance and a briefest duration of time. In this theory, these little bits of space are attached together. I kind of imagine it like chainmail, with the individual loops held together to make a piece of armor.
For space and time? You're talking about space-time? Back to 3D again? I don't know. Maybe he just feels that it's easier to dumb this down this way for his audience. I don't know how dumbed down the audience for FermiLab is.
This paradigm is more like Einstein's model in that it is geometrically motivated, but it suffers from the fact that a path from loop quantum gravity to general relativity still eludes us. Another quantum idea is that gravity isn't fundamental, but rather it emerges from deeper principles, including string theory, black hole physics, and quantum information theory.
Physics? That's the study of the physical. What you're detailing isn't that.
Entropic gravity acts differently than accepted gravitational theory, and it's slower to...
Oh, right. Entropic gravity. This sounds like a hijacking of natural law.
was about to say, because it's the other way around. They're taking a second order effect of entropy and calling it gravity, and now they're going to hijack entropy and say that has something to do with gravity. Is that really what he's going to go to?
I think that's where it's going in general. He's detailing lists of stuff that is presumably already in circulation. Well, if you can't beat it, join it. If you can't beat quantum mechanics with Einsteinian pseudo-force space bending and geodesics in space-time, then just strap it on. Call it quantum gravity. And in this case, they're doing the same thing with entropic law. The main difference being that when they strap on a just so story to a explanation, it's not really stealing valor from any scientific validity, is it? To describe entropic gravity is to just try and incorporate the descriptions of things that always occur, that would be descriptions of phenomena, with something that isn't scientifically validated in terms of its pseudo-geometry. I mean, he said a couple of sentences ago that Einstein was geometrically driven. You're not kidding. He's invented a new geometry called pseudo-Riemannian force space.
To weaken at cosmic distances. This is one possible explanation for why galaxies rotate quicker than they should.
Then they should. Is this like seeing things in the distance further than we should? Why is it that these people think they are God when they come up with their maths for this crap? Suddenly, they can tell you how fast things in the night sky should be doing things. Who the hell do these people think they are?
Basically, entropic gravity tries to explain the same things that dark matter does.
Now he's reifying this pseudo theory. Sorry, it doesn't imagine anything. It's the words of men and their concepts. You're describing it like it's a man itself. He's even reifying his own pseudo nonsense now. The level of incompetence and fallacy in this is off the charts.
In any event, entropic gravity invents ordinary gravity, starting not from forces.
What's ordinary gravity? Have we seen that yet? Has it been qualified? Has it been described or proven scientifically? Which one's ordinary gravity?
Or geometry, but rather entropy and the statistical behavior of microscopic degrees of freedom.
That's brilliant! Microscopic degrees of freedom? So when we typically use freedom as an example of something that you can't qualify because it's merely a concept, you're going to introduce us into the maths. Oh my God. How much does it weigh? How much is the exact kilogram value for the freedom? I mean, what the hell?
I laughed so hard when I heard that. Microscopic degrees of freedom.
Oh my God. James Richard says, I imagine it's a chain mail. That's one hell of an imagination. Amazing. Indeed. You can imagine it as chain mail. You can imagine it as bending, looping, all sorts of crazy notions. It's epic. You can do whatever you like in pseudo-geometry. It's marvellous stuff. Thank you for the super chat, James Richard. Really appreciate the support.
And there are other ideas about quantum gravity. Maybe one day I'll do a deep dive into all of them.
What, like this deep dive? No, thanks.
But let's get back to that gravity is a force thing.
It isn't. We started off your video with you explicitly being given a statement of fact that it's not a force. That statement of fact wasn't a question.
The key thing is that understanding any physical phenomena requires
the scientific method. Having an understanding of a physical phenomena, there's an express method designed to do that exact thing with an empirical outcome at the end. It's called the scientific method. It specifically details the cause of natural phenomena. So why is that happening? That's a phenomena in nature that you've observed. Well, I think it's because of this. That would be your A statement, your independent variable in a hypothesis. And then someone comes along and goes, well, that's a great explanation. So this causes that. No, it's only a supposition at this stage, because also it doesn't cause that. Check out my other statement in the same prediction. A doesn't cause B, the phenomena we're studying. That is known as a scientific prediction, not an explanation, because A can't cause B and not cause B. So we have to vary it and see which one causes it. That's science. That's what the method's for.
It's a theoretical framework.
Oh, really? So you are under the misapprehension that in order to establish the cause of phenomena, You need a theoretical framework. Now, where have we heard that before? That sounds familiar. Yeah, I'm talking to you, various numpty flat earthers out there.
In Newtonian thinking,
Nathan.
gravity is
Yes.
Nathan, you keep saying the word ideas. Isn't that why we're in the situation that we're in? Because there was no science or anything. They just had a bunch of ideas. Nothing was validated.
Yeah, the main MO of pseudoscience in this day and age is to take the notion of a hypothesis, which is very specifically when QE explained why the question was going to be formed in that way. Any viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics, well, it's formulated in that way because that's the game. The game is to turn a suppositional statement into an explanation. So turning hypotheses into explanations. So instead of having A causes B and A doesn't cause B as a scientific prediction hypothesis, you turn it into just the alternative. A causes B. Well, as a statement without the null next to it, that's an explanation. A causes B. There it is. Well, why do anything else? We've already got the explanation. It's right there. I've got a hypothesis. And then you can slowly detach yourself from any responsibility for that statement of truth when it isn't validated by packaging it around words that also sound scientific, like theory. So you take a method that has step 2, formulate a supposition of the cause of the effect you're going to study, and change that into suppose a cause and state that is the cause, and then make a story around that. That's the gig, that's the bag, that's the game, that's the bait and switch. That's what they do with all of the stuff that this FermiLab guy has been detailing. Everything he has described uses that technique. Take a hypothesis because it has a great sound to it when you use the word, or take the end result of hypothesis-based experimentation, theory, and call it that, because it's got a really wonderful ring to it. What is that ring that it has? Well, it's the ring of empiricism, but he doesn't have it. He's got just so stories. He's got the misappropriation of a scientific prediction and a reinstatement of it as an explanation. That's the whole game.
is a force. In the Einstein...
Did I credit Quantum Eraser for me being able to disseminate that, by the way? I think I did. If I didn't, QE was the one that gave me that information to be able to regurgitate it in such a concise manner.
Formulation, it isn't. And we don't know at the quantum level. If gravitons are...
At the quantum level, you haven't explained what that is. So far, you've only detailed what quantum gravity is. You haven't got into what quantum mechanics is. You haven't explained that in terms of its scientific validity. You're just stealing valor from it.
Right? Then gravity is a force at high energy, but it...
No, it isn't. Gravity is not a force. Bending pseudo-force space-time isn't a force.
Lower energy theories must look like the geometrical explanation.
No, the geometrical explanation is the geometry of pseudo-force space.
But looking like something is different than being something.
What, like looking like you've got a bend when you can describe a bend versus having a bend that you can't see because it's a geodesic in a space-time dimension that you didn't detail when describing our space bends?
After all, Newtonian gravity usually looks like Einsteinian gravity.
No, it doesn't. They're in completely different geometries. You're an idiot.
The bottom line is that...
Go ahead.
There's also the high energy, or what low energy, or no, it's high energy short distance problems that one lady spoke of. It's like their delusionary world that they exist in, and that's where he's trying to stay. But he keeps on introducing these words that are in the real world, and that's where we're busting him every time.
Indeed, exactly. As soon as he juxtaposes it with anything in the physical or physics, or words that have come from the physics, that's science, then you can just bust him. It's like, no, this is all taking place in the conceptual, both Einsteinian and pseudo-Riemannian. And now, quantum pseudo-Riemannian? No, definitely not. Only true in the maths. And that means nothing in the physics, because there isn't any. Another shout out, James Richard, man, you are smashing the super chat so hard today. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Theoretical framework is a hypothesis. Do you have one? If not, perhaps you have heard of pseudoscience. I see what you mean. Yeah, I've read it all. I see what you're saying. You're saying that when they say theoretical framework, they're stealing valor from the seemingly empirical sounding word of hypotheses. Yeah, that is what they're doing. When they say theoretical framework, they mean just so story explanation instead of a supposition yet to be validated. I think that's what you mean, James. Thank you for the super chat. Yes, indeed. Okay, we've got a few more minutes left on this live show, so...
That it's hasty to make any claims about the nature of gravity. It's a force, or it's a geometry, or it's caused by a buzzing of quantum particles. The answer you get depends on the theoretical framework you're using. However, stripped of theory...
No, you don't. No, not stripped of theory, not stripped of theoretical frameworks, not an answer that's dependent on theoretical frameworks. Yeah, in empirical science, there's only one outcome. The two outcomes that you predict, one will be discounted. Yeah, that theoretical framework you're describing is the substitution of hypothesis-driven experimentation for just so stories. That's why there's multiple answers for multiple different theoretical frameworks. You shouldn't have multiple answers. You should have one. A causes B.
Nathan.
Yep.
Nathan, he says hasty to make any claims concerning gravity. How many years have been they saying it exists, but now it's hasty to make any claims?
Exactly. You can make up a whole load of new shitty sweets for the shitty sweet shop for you to choose from, and they'll all have different horrible tastes left in your mouth, and none of them will represent the reality of a nice tasting sweet. But there's loads to choose from.
It reminds me of them assuming rotation of the Earth first, and then taking hundreds and hundreds of years trying to prove it, and they still haven't.
In the pre-show, I said I was waiting for a phone call. Literally just had that text message saying I've missed that phone call just as I'm about to do the outro. Isn't that sod's law? So I may disappear while I'm doing the the after show, but for all of you watching live, unfortunately, because of that little message, this is going to be where we bid you farewell. So another massive, huge, enormous thank you to James Richards for smashing the super chat, and all the rest of you for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
It's amazing to me that how they want empiricism so bad, but they don't have it because they keep changing. And they change because they've never had it to begin with.
Kent, I think they don't want empiricism.
Right, I've got to. Sorry to interrupt.
That's what it sounds like.
Sorry. Can I just nominate somebody? Maybe Arwin. You there? Arwin? Or 10th? 10th, can I nominate you to just keep a bit of order just for 10 minutes while I disappear?
Sure.
Thank you.
No, go on, Neil. Go on.
No, I was just saying, it sounds to me like they don't want empiricism. They want to keep pushing pseudoscience so they can have their just so stories.
No.
Keep their ball.
No, you got to look at it this way. They label every new thing and have to say it's scientifically had some empiricism. But then later they change, and now that thing needs empiricism. But if you had it in the first place, why does it keep changing? Anybody?
Because they never had it.
Right. It's obvious. Okay, Newton was this. Okay, well, then Einstein said Newton is not complete, so I'm going to fill in the gaps. Now Einstein's not complete, so we're going to steal valor from quantum and call it quantum gravity. And then we're going to invent these things called gravitons, and we're going to say there's a dimension that is outside the three dimensions we do know. And where's the proof for any of this?
Well, like if you look into how most of these people are philosophically inclined, the first thing they're going to say is the only thing they know is they don't know anything. And that's really where their problem starts, I think.
But they got to, John, they got to have some basis to build these colloquial theories on that has to be bedrock, or they can't build it on anything. What do they have?
Well, if you
quantum mechanics.
if you build a house on the water, right, and it's
Yeah.
sinking, if you keep building onto that house as it's sinking, you get up high enough and you can think, well, it's not sinking anymore.
Hey, that's a good illustration of what's happening. That's beautiful.
Well, I look at it this way. Their goose is cooked, but they remind me of, what was that prosperity church? Name it and claim it. Right? That's what they do with this science. They just declare it, right?
All right. Well, let's go with what he said. Black hole physics. What is that?
I'm trying to think of the word that goes before declare.
No, I know, but
Declare
I
and
want.
declare.
No, I got you. Observe and declare. So you just observe, and then you
Right.
just make a just so story.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Observe and declare. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So what's black hole physics? Anybody?
I don't even know what a black hole is. My son says they're making them here on Earth, little ones.
They're making little black holes. Is that a manhole cover that you lift up and you see a black hole? I mean, what is it?
I don't know. He said the Hadron Collider, if I'm pronouncing it right. They're making black holes.
Okay, it's got what's physics? Anybody?
Physical.
Right. So what's black hole physics? It's got to be physical, right?
Yeah, it's got to be physical, but it just sounds like an idea because I don't see no physical black hole. Nobody's shown me one.
Well, if you're looking down a manhole cover and it's dark down there, that's a black hole. Is that what they're talking about?
No. They're talking about something totally different.
What goes with black holes? Something like a donut and something in the middle of the donut. What's that comparison?
Gravity.
Oh, okay. So you need black holes for gravity.
Right. I see where you're going.
Anybody know that claim of theirs of some galaxy forming or exploding in a black hole and everything's being pulled in, almost like that movie Interstellar was trying to show? Is that a part of their space-time bending, a concept?
It's gotten so confusing for them at this point that I doubt they even know what they're saying.
Well, he folded a piece of paper and said, "This is what's happening."
Right. They have no idea what they think that because they can fold a piece of paper in half, they can bend reality.
I see.
It's delusional.
Yeah, you fold a piece of paper in half, you stick a pen through it, and you explain Einstein. That's what they did on that movie Deja Vu, when Denzel Washington had to go back in time to save that girl. It's all mathematics. They even said it in the movie.
So now let's go to loop quantum gravity. Anybody want to?
I think that one is you know how they reify the wave function of particle placement, whenever you try to graph it out, and that you end up with a wave function, right? If you're going to graph its point of interaction over time, like I think they're taking that, saying it's a circle, and then connecting all the circles together. I don't know that, but that's the brand of reification I would guess they're using.
The way he was talking, they don't know it even. There's just ideas thrown out that it could be this, it could be that. He's got all these names for it, but they haven't figured it out. But he kept using the word theory. Obviously, it hasn't gone through the scientific theory as we finished the show with. Anything else on this guy?
Are we going to grade him on his heliocentric knowledge? Because
let's do that. What would you give him? The official heliocentric claim of 108 years old now, Einsteinian, four-dimensional space. How would he rate on that?
Well, I'll give him a B+ for convoluting the meaning of words, because that's really important in heliocentrism, that you confuse the meaning of words as much as possible. Not accepting gravity is not a force. I'm going to have to give him a D on that, because it was like he had a tacit acceptance of it, but he just wouldn't come out and say it. So, yeah, I'm going to give him a D on that.
Yeah, I give him an F with that.
How about waiting till later to talk about space-time bending?
Oh, that was A plus. He talked in so many circles, he confused himself. That is perfect heliocentrism right there.
When he said earlier, the theory is incomplete, so we're going to have a replacement theory. Isn't that just an obvious admission? It was never gone through any proper testing. All you had was a hypothesis at best, if you saw something naturally occurring in nature, but then you never went forward to figure out what the cause and effect for that was.
I think Arwen covered that the best, though, when he said that the whole idea of heliocentrism is that, like, they're always building upon it, like they're building upon what they know. It's kind of like, but they don't. It's not built on knowing. You know what I mean? I can't remember how Arwen said it, but
I remember he said, hoping someday they will find the answer, but they never will, because it ain't real.
Right, but then that goes to your illustration of building a house on sand and it starts sinking, and then now it's in water, and then you say, well, I don't want to sink, so you build another part of the house, and by the time you're trying to avoid sinking, you've built 90 stories, but you're still sinking. So you got 90 stories, pun intended, stories of the story.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They just keep on trying to build onto it as the lower parts crumble into stupidity. I don't know what else to call it. But
You know what's trouble for me? When they ask Neil deGrasse Tyson, what is gravity? You know what he does. What it is? I don't know. But these people seem to try to give answers to something that don't exist.
What do you think, John, about the part when they introduced the Cartesian grid system, and he showed it sitting on a mesh, and they had bend to it, so it was a 3D description, but he never showed 4D. What do you think of that little imagery?
I didn't get to see the illustration, but that I guess you would call it pseudo geometry for a reason, right? Sham geometry.
Yeah. Well, he defined it by a grid system, which was 3D. But it wasn't until later that he brought in space-time. He called it space for a long time, just space. And then Nathan picked up on it. Well, you could show a curve in space. I mean, in the Cartesian, you could show all these straight lines, curves, whatever. But he wanted to push space-time, but he waited till the end to bring in the 4D concept of time bending, which is ridiculous. I mean, how do you bend time?
Stuck it in there, boy, didn't he?
Well, I think a lot of this goes to where, you can call entropy the arrow of time, right? But if you reify that and then point it downwards, that's what they do. And then they take and, I don't know, come up with crazy ideas after that. And they think they're based on reality.
Can you, while we're waiting for Nathan to finish what he's doing, can you go through, I mean, you did the other day and it was really good. Why is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle a problem for them?
Well, you can know a particle's speed, but you can't know its position, or you can know its position, but you can't know its speed. Well, if you're going to draw a line, right, you have to know the position all throughout that. And if you're going to say that there's a speed along that line, you would have to know how fast that particle's moving at each position. That that doesn't work with the uncertainty principle.
Give us more context. Why doesn't it work, and why are they stuck there?
If you're going to draw a line, whether it's curving or not, and that's what they do with their pseudo geometries and geometries, you would have to know where that each point of that line, you would have to know at each position, and you would have to know the speed that it traveled along that line. Well, the uncertainty principle says that you can't know that.
And what do they say to the uncertainty principle? Do they challenge it? Do they say, well, that doesn't affect the outcome of what we're saying to you with our calculations?
I don't think it computes. I don't think they understand it. Or if they do understand it, they just don't think about it when they talk about these things. I can't really speak to why they don't get it.
So are you saying it's within their field, they understand what it is, but they kind of keep it at arm's length because it destroys what they're currently saying?
I don't know if astrophysics and those fields deal with that enough to. I don't know. I don't know why it's such a problem for them.
Adam, do you know? Are you within your mic here? Going once. No. How about you, John? Huey?
I think Adam is. I don't think he's with us today. I think he's working.
Yeah. Well, okay. I see his icon.
I think Nathan walked away, and everyone else did too.
Except us three.
No, Owen's here, and Huey is here. Huey, answer the question, darn it.
So what do you
I
think?
don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair. It's not fair for us to answer it. It's upon them to answer it, right?
Exactly.
Like, you know, like I can't tell you why they don't accept these things.
Arwen, what's your summary of the video?
I was out for groceries.
Well,
That's
that's
my summary.
you must have it in the bag. So come on, tell us.
Right. Well, I did my show today, half of it about gravity and how it doesn't apply to physics. And there was somebody in my chat, the same guy that, whatever. Anyway, he basically stated like, yeah, the three-body problem hasn't been solved, but it still could be. And he hung on to that, even though it's a problem that's been out there for, what is it now, over 80 years? And all the best mathematicians in the world and computers have not been able to even get close to solving it.
What is the three-body problem, Arwen?
It's the model for how they calculate the attraction or the pull for the gravity, right? And Einstein gravity can't have more than one body of attraction, yet the scenario of the Earth's heliocentric claim is that there are three bodies: the sun, the moon, and Earth, like at least for starters. And so how do you solve that with Einstein gravity exclusively? You don't.
So can you break that down a little bit simpler for the audience? So in Einsteinian, it's only a single body?
There's only one source of attraction, basically. That is how it works with that. With Newtonian can be multiple.
Well, that's mass attracts mass, right?
That's what that's allegedly based on, yeah.
All right, well, that's if you have two bodies, then that'd be one mass attracting the other mass. All right. So in Einsteinian, why is it limited to one?
You'd have to ask a math expert. I don't know the exact details. It's just the way that works mathematically.
Oh,
it's not.
Go on, John.
Or ask John.
It's nonlinear. You just can't add in another body. It's a nonlinear function. It'll never work to add in another body.
So how did they accept it? Did they know that early on when Einstein introduced it? Or did they find that out later and now it's a problem? Or did they know all the time it was an incomplete Einsteinian theory?
I think that's probably going to be it's probably going to turn out to have been figured out like very quickly after it was published. Like the Einstein paper, very quickly they would have figured that out.
So did they say it's wrong, Einstein? Why did they accept it then?
I don't know. I don't even know why Einstein's supposed gravity even became accepted and part of curriculum in university. I don't even know why. I don't know how that's even happened.
Hey,
I don't
Owen,
understand it.
Owen, we're killing time because Nathan went to do something. So play along. You're the smartest guy
Well,
here.
he is playing along.
What are you
He's
talking
telling
about?
us, he's telling what he
Oh, I thought you were
does.
getting mad. I'm sorry. I stepped out. I came
Getting
back. I thought
mad?
you were getting mad because you didn't know.
No, he's
What?
telling what
Okay.
he does know and what doesn't know. He's being honest.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had someone the other day tell me that they don't accept flat Earth or anything we say that's concerning this topic because the other side has empiricism. And so I said, "Oh, really? What empiricism do they have? What is empiricism? Anybody want to define that word?"
It's validated through scientific experimentation. That's empiricism.
Well, is it that, or is it just through physical interaction, actually physically accomplishing something?
Can you look it up? Can you look it up in the dictionary and just read it?
Repeatable, testable, verifiable.
Right.
Oh, okay.
After the experiment, correct?
So you got your hands on it, your senses are involved, repeatable, testable, verifiable. Someone have an actual definition they could read?
Go ahead, John.
That is the definition of it. Empirical is something that is testable, repeatable, and verifiable.
So when a person said to me that heliocentrism, gravity, all these things, then it should fall within the parameters of repeatable, testable, and verifiable if it's empirical. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we ask our housekeeping questions, how can you have gas pressure next to a vacuum? Is it possible to have gas pressure next to a vacuum? Or do you need a container of some kind to have gas pressure?
Well, you can't test it because we are in a container because we have gas pressure. So we can't test whether you could even have gas pressure without a container.
So the antecedent for gas pressure must be a containment.
Must be. Well, it just is.
Right. So since we have gas pressure, and they're saying, in their view, yeah, we got gas pressure and it's coexisting next to a vacuum. Well, wouldn't that be a flaw in logic right there?
Right. Well, look, the whole fundamental problem is that you can't basically define gas pressure without a container. And that part is the part that, well, the heliocentric pseudo physicists ignore. That's the specific part they ignore. That you can't, it's literally part of the definition. Like there is no gas pressure without a container is literally like how you even calculate it. The very pattern of dealing with it requires containment.
Okay.
You can't
and then-
define gas pressure without a container. Let's just keep it simple.
Right. And we know the gas laws that exist. There are many. So they're going to say, and it was the topic of today's video, well, the weight of the gas, one layer after another layer after another layer, is keeping it on Earth, but that's next to a vacuum. Now, how is that possible? The gas law would violate that statement immediately, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it won't violate the atmospheric laws that specifically apply to the globe cosmology. It'll work out just fine in those. All you have to do is just make sure you quickly switch the briefcases so nobody notice. Right?
Are they? Can you quote these atmospheric laws? Are they laws, or is this just a story?
No, it's unwritten laws. It's the law of the globe believer, right? Principles. Yeah, call it a principle. Would be
Yeah,
better.
yeah, that's much better. All right. So what about this claim of gravity, which today the guy didn't make any claims because it keeps changing? Could gravity keep the gas down, Arvin?
Yes, if you think of gas as a fluid and it goes down, goes boom boom, then yeah, that conceptually works.
So where does gas produced? On the ground or in the sky?
Produced? I don't know. Where
Hold
did
on.
it come from?
No,
Hold on.
where's go on?
Atmospheric law is a law, but it's equivocated with barometric law, and that's PV equals NK subset BT. So it's there, but it's there in name only.
Well, Atmo is there. Do we have sphere shape there? Can they prove that?
No, it has nothing to do with the shape. It has everything to do with the function of height as it varies according to ideal gas law. But
I mean the pressure. The pressure.
Yeah. Yes.
So we got low pressure, high pressure systems that affect our weather. That's what you're talking about.
Well, it's got within the mathematical formulation is PV, which is pressure and volume, which would be a problem, because that V. So that it doesn't really make sense for atmospheric in the way that they think about it.
Yeah, they just colloquialized it. It's just atmosphere. The sphere is basically a silent word, right? It just don't think about it. Just say atmosphere. Everybody says atmosphere. Don't think about that it actually means sphere-shaped air. That's not relevant. It's just the air. It just happens to be sphere-shaped in our words now. Don't think about it too much.
But gas goes in all directions. It's unbonded, right?
Well, up to a certain degree, eventually it will go down, go boom boom,
Well,
just like everything else.
How does it go down? Doesn't it have to hit something to go a different direction, a different vector in a linear path?
Yes, but if the pull of gravity, the force version of gravity, which is not included in Einstein gravity, I know, but that thing that is still assumed to be there, eventually, when the pull of it becomes hard enough, then it will like turn around and just not bounce up against something and move down. You saw it in that brilliant CGI model yesterday.
So the pull of gravity, since we're begging the question of something that doesn't exist, in their world, where is the strongest? At Earth's surface or much higher than Earth's surface? Where's the pull of gravity the strongest?
That doesn't matter.
No, in their world, where would they say it's the strongest?
Yeah, and their response is that doesn't matter.
No, it does matter because the official line is on the ground because you're on Earth. And
Yeah, but that's only according to Newtonian principles, so it's not really relevant.
Oh, I see. This is where they jump then.
That might be the reason they went to Einsteinian, because of gas behavior.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's probably why they were so
They
quick.
just use Newtonian mechanics. They don't actually hold Newtonian mechanics accountable for not existing. Okay, that's how it works.
So
they
John,
use it, but they when you point at them using it, then they'll say, yeah, it's not really relevant because, yeah, doesn't matter.
So John, what you're saying is they saw the helium balloon go up and they said, oops, we got to change it?
Well, not necessarily the helium balloon going up, because it's the behavior of gas particles themselves, like Brownian motion, things like that has no inherent down direction as a bias, right? So they freaked out, kind of, I guess, and it just accepted the first thing that they hoped made sense to them.
In that illustration that Adam showed, showing that box sealed and gas particles introduced to it, and you could apply heat to it to make it excited, and they would go faster. Once he opened the lid, they were not contained in that box, so they were no longer pressurized, and they were escaping into the available volume. That is the behavior of gas that we all know. So how in the world go on.
That's at ground level. When you go higher up, well, Newtonian mechanics would dictate that the gravity pull would become less, but when they argue it, it actually becomes more because it has to pull all that air back, right? Even though it's very thin. So yeah, I know it makes no sense. It's all inside out.
But gravity's not a force.
That's how it works. That's the only thing that could keep it into place.
Yeah, but gravity's not a force, Alan.
It doesn't matter.
Why doesn't it matter?
Because it's there anyway.
Right, we're talking about how they operate within the delusion at that point, and how Arwen's responding is how they would respond. They would just hand wave it away.
No, I know. I'm pulling it out by asking these questions, and I'm having fun doing it. And Arwen's doing a good job.
Unfortunately, that's going to be where we end this show. So another massive, enormous, huge thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.